Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of Clickbox Summit. This session will be about sourcing your Amazon products from India, and we will have two ladies. They are running India Sourcing Network. They help Amazon sellers and e-commerce sellers to get products from Indian suppliers, manufacturers. So if you have ever looked something more than China, for example, India, so this session is for you. And I would like to mention that this session is sponsored by three sponsors. It's Getida, Zonguru, and Awesome. Getida helps you to get FBA reimbursements. You can find the offer probably somewhere in the links in the description of this video. And Zonguru is all-in-one suite for Amazon sellers for all your needs. And finally, Awesome is an Amazon FBA aggregator. So if you want to sell your business, contact them and talk to them, and maybe they will acquire your brand. And now I would like to invite Lisette. She will be co-hosting this session. Lisette Lees works with different Amazon brands, and she also is frequent host of videos on Orange Click channel. And finally, would like to invite Meghla and Margaret, two ladies from India Sourcing Network.
Let's get ready for Meghla and Margaret at the Clickbox Summit.
All right, so Meghla and Margaret, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do and how you help Amazon sellers?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Augustas and Lisette, for inviting us. We're super excited to be part of this very unique event. So I am Meghla Bhardwaj. I am the co-founder of India Sourcing Network, and my background is basically in sourcing. I've been in the sourcing industry for over 20 years. And for the last 3 years, I've been helping Amazon and e-commerce sellers source products from India. And together with my partners, Margaret and Kevin, I have launched India Sourcing Network, where we feature vetted suppliers and service providers to help e-commerce sellers source from India.
And I'm Margaret, and I'm obviously Meghla's co-founder. And I originally started in retail and all sorts of different businesses over my career, managed and owned. And then about 4 years ago, or 5 years ago now, actually moved into Amazon selling and e-commerce. From there, we started off selling in China. From China, then we actually moved over to sourcing from India, and of course we then stumbled across Meghla and ended up coaching on her first trip to India, which was in 2019 before COVID came into play, and ever since then we've been just doing it virtually as much as we can.
So can you shortly tell us very briefly what you will be sharing exactly in your presentation, which we start in a few seconds?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to be sharing 10 insider strategies to help people source from India more effectively. And, we've got an in-depth workshop that we do for over 12 hours long. And we have taken some tidbits from the workshop to give to your audience today.
Perfect. So let's jump to the presentation. And
okay, awesome. Let's get started. So 10 insider strategies for smooth India sourcing. So the first one is Margaret, yours. Go for it.
Okay, look, sourcing from India is quite different actually. You can have a lot of social enterprises and cooperatives in India that employ many women from around the villages, such as macrame, crocheting, basket weaving. They do all these from their home. Sometimes they do them from like a community centre. And with those things, it's great to incorporate those into your brand story. What you can actually do is get some videos done, show some photos into your brand story, and really promote these, women and how these products are actually helping people, I suppose, have a new life and get out and get an income. Some of these women are home without, any income, and it actually gives them some freedom to, get out and do the products. Now, people worry that they say because it's going to be made by a woman, just on her own, but it's actually managed by like the manager of the co-op, and they get sent like a plan or a diagram of what they've got to make. So at the end of the day, all the products will be exactly to the same specs. So they can actually scale and do quite large orders, as well as doing, just the smaller orders as well. So it's not something that you can only get, like 100 made. They can actually scale up with adding more and more people to that. And look, with that, we find, it's really good to actually, I suppose, help people and, feel that you're actually creating employment for someone who would, usually have nothing to do. So it's, it's great for the community and for these, women's sort of whole, I think, atmosphere in their life, because they either work as a community or they're getting people coming to them for the work. And look, what we get a lot of people find now is to actually donate to charity. So it's a great thing, on your Amazon listing to put that, like $1 or something from your sale can be actually, go back to the village or to, some community centre or something like that. So I think, by actually moving to India, you can also help, a lot of people and empower them to get sort of somewhere in their life. So, please have a look at all our Indian products as we go through, and I'm sure you'll be surprised with what is available.
All right, finding products and suppliers. So the next couple of tips are about finding suppliers. And we get asked this question a lot, like, how do I find Indian suppliers? So there are a couple of things that you need to focus on. First of all, there are different supplier directories that you can use, like there's Alibaba, Global Sources, and there's also India Sourcing Network, the website that we have. But one thing that you can do is look for the exhibitor directory of Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts. Now, this is a government organization, and they organize a trade show called the Delhi Fair twice a year. It's organized every April and October. It's a physical fair, but they're also doing virtual editions now. But if you download the catalog and the supplier directory of this fair, then you'll be able to get a lot of different suppliers that are export focused. And when you're sourcing from India, it's very important to only source from export focused companies, because there are a lot of companies that are domestic focused, but those companies don't really know the standards and the requirements of export markets. So when you download this exhibitor directory from the Delhi Fair, you have a good supplier list to start with, because all of these companies are exporters. And you can also go to the virtual fair that they have hosted and download the catalogs of these suppliers. And when you get the catalogs, then you can find a lot of different product ideas, because a lot of the different Indian suppliers, they don't maintain their websites and they don't upload products very frequently to their websites. So you have to generally send them an email and then ask them to give you your latest catalog, their latest catalog. The other thing that you should do is, when you're sourcing from India, then you should vet your supplier to ensure that they are a legitimate company. And there are a couple of things that you can do to vet suppliers. So first of all, get their GST number. GST stands for Goods and Services Tax, and every company in India is required to have a GST number. So in order to get their GST number, just search for GST plus the supplier name on Google. And usually their GST number is listed on their own website or some other website, usually IndiaMart or some other websites. Once you have their GST number, then you can go to this government website where GSTs can be checked. And you can just search on Google GST India check. And once you do that, go into the website and then plug in the GST number, and that will give you some basic information about the company. For example, it will tell you what exactly is their this is what you will get once you go into the once you enter the GST number. You'll get their legal name of business, their trade name, their effective date of registration, whether their GST is active, what kind of business there is, what their office address is. And so there's a lot of information that you can get about a supplier over here. But most importantly, what you can also get is the nature of their core business activity. And this will tell you if they're a manufacturer or a trading company. Because what happens is sometimes, suppliers in India or even China, this happens, that suppliers may say that they're a manufacturer, but actually they are a trading company. So this is one way to verify that they are in fact a manufacturer, because only manufacturers that can prove they have factories are allowed to put this, get this manufacturer status on their GST certificate. And then you'll also be able to get an understanding of the overall business activities that they have. So this company, for example, has a factory, does manufacturing, but they also do retail business, imports, supplier of services, exports. And then you'll also be able to tell their key product categories. So for example, this company does copper, aluminum, some articles of wood, and then table, kitchen, or other household articles. So this basically is just a way to verify the profile of the company that you are planning to work with. The other thing that you can also see on this GST website is when they have filed their GST. So in India, it is all companies are required to file their GST every month. So you can see over here, you'll be able to see all of the records of when they have filed the GST. And if there are gaps over here, let's say it's 2 or 3 months they have not filed GST, then that's a red flag. Then you should be a bit cautious that, hey, why hasn't this supplier filed their GST for a few years? Maybe they didn't have any orders, or, that's just sort of a red flag that you need to be aware of. The other thing that you can also do is check their import-export code. Now, as I mentioned, you must make sure that the supplier that you're working with is export experienced and is able to export products from India. Every exporter is required to have an IEC code. And so again, what you can do is go to Google and search for IEC code plus the supplier name. Usually you'll be able to find the IEC code on another website, their own website, but in case you're not able to find the IEC code, you can just ask the supplier for their IEC code, or you can ask the supplier to give you their IEC certificate. It's totally normal to do that. Don't hesitate to ask suppliers to provide you documents related to their export experience or even their company registration. Now, once you have the IEC code, again, search for IEC code India check, something like that on Google, and then you'll come to this website that is run by the Government of India, dgft.gov.in. Now, once you're on this website, this is a screenshot of the website. You can enter the IEC code of the supplier, enter the first 3 characters of their name, and then you can view their IEC certificate. And over here, you can see there's some basic information that you can get, the IEC number. You can see if their IEC status is valid or if it is suspended. You can also see when the IEC was filed, so how long have they been exporting. And the most important thing over here, you can see the category of exporter. So this company over here is a merchant exporter. Merchant exporter basically refers to a trading company. So they don't have their own manufacturing facility. And then you can also see their registered address over here. And then this is another company that I had searched, and this is a screenshot of their details. And then over here, you'll see that the category of exporters is manufacturer exporter. So you know that this company has their own factory. Now, this does not mean that they manufacture all products in-house. This just means that they have the license to manufacture and they have a factory. Many times what happens is suppliers manufacture some products in-house and they outsource other products. So if you do want to source via a manufacturer, you do want to make sure that the supplier can produce in-house the products that you are specifically looking for. Okay, another tip when you're selecting suppliers is to focus on their capability. What is their strongest product line? What have they done in the past? What do they mostly do? What kind of equipment do they have in their factory? What sort of processes do they do in-house? Because what happens is in India and in China, this happens as well. A lot of factories will say, yes, we can do that. That's not a problem. They don't like to say no to a buyer. If they are not able to produce the product in-house, they will try to source it from somewhere else. And but they don't want to say no, or they don't want to refuse business from you. So one of the ways to really find out if they produce this product in-house is to ask, dig a little deeper and find out what exactly their core expertise is. What is their strongest product line? For example, some suppliers may make wooden products, and that is their strength. They have all the equipment, the expertise to produce wooden products, but they may outsource metal products from another factory. So the capability or the expertise is usually based on the material or the type of product that they manufacture. Of course, there may be some very large factories that can manufacture different product lines, and that is fine too. They may have different facilities for manufacturing the different kinds of product lines. But what's really important is you should try to find out what is their core capability, what is it that they do best, and then source those products from these suppliers.
Yeah, thanks, Meghla. Okay, now with India, you'll find that language is not a barrier. English is predominantly spoken, so communications are quite easy. We suggest that you do frequent Zoom calls. It's very simple to jump on a call with them and sort of look at your products. I find I'm on the phone or on the Zoom with my supplier quite a lot, because we'll ask them if we're developing a sample or got something we want to check. We hop on and have a look at the sample. You can look at your packaging. You can ask them to go out and show you as you're doing your production. You can say to them, look, can you go out into the factory and show me where you're at, or what you're doing with my product. So you can check, as it's packaged, or any stage of the process. You can ask them, to show that your barcode's okay. Can you show me the back of the packaging, whatever you need. So we find that Zoom works really, really well in a lot of instances. But look, when you're dealing with suppliers, if you're doing a call, we always suggest, whether it be on WhatsApp or Zoom, go back and ask them in an email to confirm anything that you've asked at that point. Don't just go off and think, oh, it'll happen now. And the other thing is, I think if you've placed an order and the supplier says to you it's going to be 8 weeks or 10 weeks, don't just sit at home merrily thinking, oh, it's on its way. I would suggest, every couple of weeks you touch base and say to them, how are we progressing? Is it, on track? Can you show me it is on track? That way then you're not in for any surprises at the end. You actually know exactly, where you're at. So I think the main thing is to check constantly with your supplier and look, build a relationship. They're lovely people. I find that you get a lot better respect, I think, from them if you actually build a relationship with your supplier. So we tend to, we know about the cat and the dog and how's grandpa and what's happening with the family. So I think they like that. And, ask them about their interests. You can even, with them, you can talk about their religion, ask them, all those sorts of questions. They're not, I suppose, upset if you ask too many questions. I think they like to know you and get to know you. And I think if you can do that on Zoom, face to face, it's almost as good as going and meeting them. It's not like you're just on some, call in the background. You can't see their face. I think if you can actually talk to them and meet them, there's a really big help. Okay, be smart with your shipping. Now, with India, it's a bit of a change from China. We suggest that you always go to the East Coast. It is much faster to go to the East Coast by ship. It's around port to port 22 days, whereas if you're going into the West Coast, it's about 42 days. So there's quite a lot of difference, and you also get the more congestion at the port of the West Coast with all the Chinese sort of imports coming in there. So now Delhi is it's a dry port where you might have your goods actually stuffed in a container and it would go down to Mumbai, which is, depending on the traffic, because it's fairly busy in India, but it can be anything from about 2 to 4 days to get down to the main port. So once you get there, then you're shipping to the East Coast. The ship leaves there on a Monday. So what you try and aim is to have your shipment there by, say, the previous Wednesday. It gets stuffed into the container, ready. I think the last release date for those containers is like Friday, and then the ship sails Monday. So if you can you get into a bit of a routine once you've been doing it for a while, and your manufacturer will know these things and get the goods down there. And look, India doesn't have a lot of ports like China. So really there's only the biggest port that 90% of probably the products go out of is Mumbai. There is another port down at the bottom, and there's Chennai over the other side, but most of those aren't used as much. So it's not like there's hundreds of ports and things go all the time. So you've just got to be a little bit more organised with your actual shipments. Now, air shipping mainly goes from Delhi. Most of the production in India is done up in the north of India, so sort of Jaipur, Moradabad, all around that area, or Delhi itself. So most of those would just go by air from Delhi. If you were doing something from down the bottom at Bangalore or something, it would go from one of the local airports down there as well. So, yeah, and I think you should just always be familiar. If you're doing something that's not near Delhi, just check on a map how far away you are and start asking questions. How long is this going to take? How is it going to get there? Because sometimes they might actually put it in a container and move it even from the south up to Mumbai before it sails. So it's just getting yourself familiar on your first go. Ask your freight forwarder and your supplier all these questions so you know exactly what the time frame is. Okay, no, we have a map. That's right. Yes, we've got the map here. And so you can see there the actual shipment, when it leaves India, it goes up through the Suez Canal to either New York or down to Savannah, wherever you're shipping to. Whereas if you're going from China to the West Coast, it actually goes around the other way. So the ship would go, that's why it takes so long, it would come across the opposite direction. So that's the sort of 22-day route that we're looking at there. HS codes. Now, when you're looking compared to China, it's an idea, if you want to know what your tariffs are going to be, is to look up on the website that we've got there, hts.usitc.gov, and check what tariffs you're paying. Now, we are lucky in India because we don't have the Trump tariff. So I find, look, most of my products are metal and wood, so I either pay nothing or 4%. So there's none of these 30% surprises when you're actually shipping from India. So you can find, even if you get a quote for a product and it's a couple of dollars more from India, that what you're saving on your tariff, it usually, works out fairly cost effective in most instances. Current shipping costs, a bit of a conversation at the moment. China versus India. Now, at the moment, shipping from India it changes every 2 weeks, but the last update I had, the containers were going for around about $12,000 for a 40-foot container. Now, look, I think most of you know China's talking $25,000 to $30,000 a container, so it is a lot more economical. So that way, in that respect. And what we find is at the moment that air shipping, if you've only got under 200 kilos, we're even up to 300, 350 now because of the costs of sea shipping. Air shipping does work out cheaper. Air shipping is about $5 a kilo, something like that. So we advise people to, and I mean, you're saving a month almost in time because you're just going to go straight to the airport and, be there in a couple of days. So we're finding that a lot of people now with smaller shipments, it's probably just as beneficial to go by air as to go by sea. And I think, look, at the moment, it's really hard to tell people what it is for a smaller sea shipment, but I'm finding at the moment it's about $260 a cubic metre for sea shipping. With all on top of that, you've got about $600 or $700 port and custom duties and that as well to take into account, and your trucking. So that'll probably give someone a guide. But look, for me, my products on average, because I've got different size products, but if I average it down to say the average size would be a shoebox, I used to be paying about $1.70 a product. Now I think I'm paying nearly $4 a product with my last quote. So things have increased, but nowhere near China. Okay,
and the prices you mentioned are for shipping to US, right?
That's right, to the US, yeah. To into New York.
Answered half of the Samuel's question, but do you know, like in a comparison from shipping from China, is it like 2 times cheaper? I heard that Chinese shipping is like very expensive now.
Well, at the moment, if you look at, just say 25,000 for a container. I know some people are paying up to 30, but I think 25,000 is the average container. We're only 12, so it's probably, at least half the cost. But you've got to take into account, there's various charges. It's not, every shipment's not exactly the same, but I would say definitely double China at the moment.
The next topic that we want to talk about is negotiating in India. So first of all, keep in mind that it is totally normal to negotiate. In fact, suppliers, to some extent, they expect you to negotiate. And what you should do is, typically you should negotiate on larger orders. I mean, don't start negotiating on, a really small trial order that you're placing, let's say for about 200 units or so. That's not the time to negotiate. But as you increase order quantity, that's the time to start negotiating. And in fact, when you are getting your quotes from suppliers, then one of the things that you can do is ask for prices in brackets. So let's say you could say that, okay, if I place an order for, up to 500 pieces, what's the price? And then 500 to 1,000 pieces, what's the price? So you could sort of right at the beginning get your prices in different brackets. And then negotiating is, it's kind of tough in India. But you have to stand your ground, be persistent and be patient, and don't give something until you get something in return. It also takes time. So, be patient, but generally, it is okay to negotiate, but you should also make sure that it is a win-win for you and your supplier. I mean, if you're negotiating just for the sake of negotiating, it's not going to work out, because the supplier might start, cutting corners, or they might not prioritize your orders because they know that you're really focused on price, and that you're kind of, pushing their margins really low. So make sure that when you are negotiating, it is a win-win for both you and the supplier. Make sure that you know your retail price. What is the price that you can sell your product at? And then working backwards, determine what is the price that you should be sourcing your product at. And then once you have that price, then, maybe give a slightly lower price to the supplier and start negotiating from there. Okay, managing lead times. So when you're managing lead times, just make sure that your delivery dates are very, very clear in your purchase order, and make sure that you also have some penalties in the purchase order. If you are sourcing multiple products from the same supplier, then we do recommend signing a contract with the supplier, and the contract should be reviewed by an attorney in India, and it should be kind of, formalized and legalized. But you could have penalties in the contract to say that, okay, if the order is late by, let's say, more than 10 days, then, we will deduct X% of the payment, for example. And so make sure that you are checking in regularly with the supplier as well. And, you can't just place an order and forget about it. You have to keep maybe every week or so, check in with them, make sure that everything is on time. Also, over communicate expectations. Don't let the supplier assume anything. So, for example, whether it's your product specifications or whether it's packaging or labeling, make sure that everything is very, very clearly communicated to the supplier, because a lot of times what happens is that quality issues or other types of issues arise just because of miscommunication, because the supplier thought you meant something, but you meant something else. So don't let the supplier assume anything. Make sure that your expectations and your requirements are very, very clearly outlined in your purchase order. Also, a lot of times what buyers do is that they communicate in via different mediums, like maybe they'll send a WhatsApp message, send another email, and maybe have a phone conversation here. And then all of the instructions are kind of scattered everywhere. Make sure that all your instructions to your supplier are sent in one document so that there's no confusion and so that no instructions are missed by your supplier. Okay, so that is our presentation. And we just wanted to talk a little bit about our platform, India Sourcing Network. You can find the website at indiasourcing.net. And this is a platform that provides Amazon and e-commerce sellers everything that they need to build a private label products business from India. We have vetted suppliers. We have trusted service providers such as QC agencies, sourcing agencies, lawyers, all types of service providers that you might need. We have a lot of content related to sourcing from India. We also host a very comprehensive workshop. And we also have a community, a Facebook community that you can join, and you can connect with other people that are also sourcing from India. So in case anyone's interested, you can join our Facebook group. Just search for Sourcing from India on Facebook, or type in India Sourcing and you can join our Facebook group. So that is our presentation, Augustas and Lisette.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm drinking my tea last days from Indian sourced cup. Actually, it's a gift which I got from Meghla and Margaret a few weeks ago, and it's amazing. All right. So you mentioned workshop, and I wanted to mention that together with this session, which is part of a Klikbox Summit series, we have a Klikbox which every viewer can purchase. You will find the link somewhere around this video below at the top, where depends where you're watching. And if you purchase the Klikbox, it contains deals from all the speakers from Klikbox Summit, over 20, probably 23 service providers and softwares. And I wanted to present to you your offer, which you're offering inside the Klikbox, which is amazing. Could you tell more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, Augustas, I think this is a brilliant idea of giving like so many discounts. I think it's just a no-brainer for people to buy the Klikbox. So for us, we are offering two things. First of all, we're giving a free ticket to everyone who buys the Klikbox to our India sourcing workshop, and that is worth $279. So it's pretty significant, I feel. And this is a 3-day workshop that we host every couple of months. And the next one is in January 2022, but you can also buy recordings of the previous workshop. And this is basically an A to Z of how to source products from India. We've got over 12 hours of live content, and we also give out a lot of templates, checklists, and a lot of things that will make it very easy for you to source from India. And we also have over 80 pages of notes of everything that is covered in the workshop. So you don't have to go back and watch all of the videos, if you want to quickly refer to something. It's almost like a full book on how to source from India. So tremendous value. And the other thing that we're also offering is a 30 minutes free consultation with Margaret and me. So in case you have any questions about the products or where to source or anything at all, you can book a call with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. So check for the link for the Klikbox if you want to purchase to get access to workshop, Indian sourcing workshop by Meghla and Margaret, which is $279 usually, and Klikbox is much cheaper. And actually, Meghla, could you show us your slide with the Facebook group, because someone is asking about the Facebook group. So
yeah, there it is.
Seasons, please screenshot this address, or just search India Sourcing Group in Facebook and you will find. Perfect. So now we have a few questions. Lisette, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So thanks from my side as well. It was very interesting to listen, and I hope sellers are more interested in finding out how sourcing from India works. So let's go ahead and see what questions we have received. So the first one, are product prices generally cheaper when sourcing from India, for example, if you compare with China?
So it depends on the product category that you are looking for. And for some product categories, yes, it will be cheaper. And typically products that require more man hours to produce or more labor to produce would be cheaper in India, because overall labor costs are lower in India than they are in China. And in fact, a lot of the bigger retailers have been moving out of China for the low end kind of production. So let's say apparel or shoes, these kinds of bigger companies have been moving out to low cost production hubs like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, because production costs have been increasing in China for quite a few years. So if your product is, let's say, a handbag or some kind of apparel garment, those might be cheaper. But of course, you also have to make sure that the materials are available locally. If the material has to be imported from India, from China or elsewhere, for example, then the price may be more expensive. But then you also have to take into account the overall landed cost of the product. And for some products, there's a Trump tariff that is in addition to the regular import duties. So if your product does have an import tariff, then the overall landed cost may be maybe higher, even if the actual product cost is lower in China. So I think it's more important to look at the overall landed cost of the product. Mark, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, and look, and I think probably something that, I think a lot of people from China actually always ask for a DDP price. That's something that's not very common in India. So you probably need to do a little bit more groundwork when you're looking at your pricing, because we tend to say, and the most common thing is FOB, which is obviously We use that because most of the suppliers are a fair way from the port. So if you do FOB, you know exactly your cost of goods to the port. So then you get your shipping quote on top of that. So I think we've only got one or two suppliers we've come across that actually do DDP. It is not very common. So it's just something that you need to, I suppose, understand and get that extra sort of little bit of costing involved before you decide on your price.
All right.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's very important, actually. So how do you make sure that the quality of handcrafted products is stable and same for each shipment if you do, let's say, repeat shipments for the products you're selling on Amazon?
Yeah, well, look, we have a lot of products. We're mainly in like metal and wood, and they're, you know, most of those components are handmade. We've actually been to our factory and like people sort of, I think, until you go and see it happening, but just say you've got like the coffee mug, that handle would have been handmade. So you go into a room and you know there's a family of people. Usually, like you might have the grandfather, the father, and the son, and you know maybe some cousins and uncles, and they all seem to sort of have a separate skill in each family. So they might be making, just say, the handle on a mug, and it might be a metal. So they might sit there and they'll shape that by hand, polishing, say, knife blades or something. If you've got, say, cheese knives or something like that, for instance. Every blade is actually hand polished with a cloth, so it's not just zapped on a machine and they do thousands. So it's all hand done, but everything we don't have any issues with, you know, the next shipment being different to the one before, because they just seem to be able to produce the same. They know what the product is, they've got the specs, and we've never had, you know, any issues with, obviously being handmade, might be a fraction different in size because, you know, it's not done on a mold and just going to be churned out, you know, in the thousands. But like, it's not, you know, you don't ever, you know, put two things together and go, oh, they're totally different. But I mean, if you wanted to get out like a little gauge and be, you know, millimeter type thing, you know, it might be fractionally different. But look, it's not something that, you know, is noticeable at all.
All right.
We have a question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Also, just make sure that you're very clear with your specifications to the supplier, and also what your tolerance is in terms of sizing or, you know, color variation. So if you discuss all of that beforehand with your supplier, then they will be more cautious, you know, about these variations. And then also on your listing, you could mention that because this product is handmade, there may be slight variations in terms of the finishes or, you know, even in terms of the size.
We have a question from Katpi. He says, how do we ensure that workers aren't exploited if the labor costs are incredibly low and it could indicate exploitation? I think in China, it's very often case, right?
Yeah, and, you know, unfortunately, India is a developing country, and, you know, sometimes that might happen in India as well. So, but what you need to do is make sure that you're selecting a really good factory that is export focused, and you will definitely not have this issue. And a lot of factories are actually, they have certifications as well. So you can look for the SEDEX certification for ethical production. But I mean, generally the suppliers that we have worked with, we have never seen this kind of an issue that they are using, you know, like child labor or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, make sure that the supplier that you work with has certifications, and you can also do a factory audit. So it doesn't cost a lot to actually send a third party inspection company to the factory and actually get them to do a factory audit, send you pictures, videos, you know, details of the environment in the factory and how the workers are treated, etc. For a couple of $100, you can actually get a factory audit done.
Perfect. We have a question again from 8 Seasons. On Alibaba, they have trade insurance. Is there anything like that to protect your payment?
So Alibaba does have suppliers from India, but they do not have payment assurance or trade assurance for India suppliers. In fact, Alibaba does not have trade assurance for any other countries except for China. So what you need to do when sourcing from India is, first of all, vet your supplier really, really well. Make sure that they are a legitimate company, that they are a manufacturer, and that they are an exporter. And the second thing you need to do is, in order to manage your quality, make sure that you're giving very clear product specs to your supplier, And the third thing that you should do is not pay the entire payment upfront, so that you're protecting yourself as much as possible. So maybe make a deposit of 20% to 30%, and the rest of the payment can be made after the products pass an inspection. So that's another way to protect you. Another thing that you could do is to work with a sourcing agency. So the sourcing agency is then responsible for finding, vetting the supplier, and also to manage quality and just coordinate with the supplier as well.
Yeah, and look, I think sourcing agents sometimes, especially if you're new to the game and aren't really confident in dealing with the manufacturer and getting all your specs right. And look, sometimes you mightn't really know how something's made yourself. So, if it's something that's a little bit different, maybe for what you pay a sourcing agent in fees, look, they go to the factory, they do all the inspections for you along the way. They'll do the final inspection. They look after your boxing, make sure everything's right, your labeling and all those things, and virtually have the shipment ready for the port. So a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to pay that. But, if you're, especially unless you, sort of really experienced at what you're doing, I think it's probably a good way to start is to use a sourcing agent and learn the ropes a little bit through them, as well as just trying to muddle through it yourself if you're the very first thing into doing exporting.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. So we have another question from our viewers. So when onboarding a supplier, how do we check for the identity of the supplier?
Yes, so there are a couple of things that you need to check, and basically there are three things that you should check. First of all, check that they are a legitimate company, and because you don't want, there have been instances where you contact a company and they are just somebody sitting in their basement. So you want to make sure that they are a legitimate company. Second, you want to make sure that they are a manufacturer, and third, you want to make sure that they are an exporter. And we mentioned a couple of ways to check these things during the presentation. So Abdul, in case you didn't watch the beginning of the presentation, maybe you can go back and watch the replay.
So about India Mart, is it a good place to source products for Amazon business?
No.
I was just thinking about saying that, and that came up.
Yeah. Okay, so India Mart is a domestic-focused marketplace, and the majority of suppliers on India Mart are actually focused on the domestic market. They're selling products in the domestic market. A lot of them are wholesalers, traders who are actually importing products from China and selling them locally. So there are manufacturers on India Mart, but you have to be very careful when you are selecting suppliers. You have to vet them very carefully to make sure that they are manufacturers and they are exporters. And in fact, we tried to get India Mart to our group to do a presentation, but they were not interested in that because they are not really focused on exports. And India Mart has a lot of suppliers, and it will usually come up in search results as well when you do a Google search for India suppliers. But just be very, very cautious when you're using India Mart. Global Sources and Alibaba, those are the two major international export-focused supplier directories that you can start with. And then there's also indiasourcing.net, which is our website. We have few suppliers. We don't have that many because we're very selective about who we feature on our website. So yeah, those are the three sources that we would recommend.
Okay, very good. Good that we were able to clear this out, that people shouldn't use that platform. Okay, so one general question. So what are usually the risks for Amazon sellers who are just using or are used to source only from one country? Because we know a lot of sellers only source from China. So what are the risks that could be for those sellers?
There are just so many risks, and the last few years have shown us that things can change in the blink of an eye. You don't really know what might happen. 3 years ago, there was the trade tariff issue and the trade war between China and US. So that's one big risk that importers have to deal with, the geopolitical situation and relationships between countries. That's one thing. The second thing that you have to the second risk is what we are facing now, is the shipping costs are increasing from China, and that is another risk, because for a lot of buyers we are talking to, it's not even making sense for them to ship the product out of China because the shipping cost is like 3 times more than the actual cost of the product. So that's another risk that people have, that suddenly in one market, the prices could go up. And I think the other risk also is that what if, especially in China, what's happening is a lot of the manufacturers are selling directly on Amazon. And so they are competing, directly with the sellers that they are providing the products for. In some cases, what happens is that if you go to a supplier, give them your exclusive product, even before your product reaches Amazon, you find that there are other sellers already selling the product. That happens as well. So that's another risk that we are seeing increasingly in China, but not so much in India yet. Most suppliers in India, they prefer to manufacture products for other buyers on an OEM basis or on a private label basis, rather than selling their own brands. Of course, there are other companies in India that are coming up, brands that want to sell directly, but we're not seeing too many manufacturers that have factories that are selling directly. Mark, any other risks that you want to
we actually have interviewed a couple that have said, we did try, we put our products on Amazon, but we found it was too much work, so we've pulled them down again. So it's quite interesting to know that, they've realised that it's not as simple as just popping it on a ship and it, magically sells itself. So I think in that respect, I suppose Indian culture is more, they like to have a life balance. So they like to have a bit of a social life and their weekends and things like that. They don't work, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week like in China. And so I think that's another thing that, is a big difference between the two countries. So I think, you might, in time people might start, you might get a few factories who employ people to do that. But, I haven't sort of seen a lot of it. And you tend to know, once you've been looking at Indian products for a while, you can sort of look on Amazon and sort of tend to see, that's made from India, because they just have a much nicer handmade look than the mass-produced thing. So I think you'll soon find that it's not going to happen as much, I don't think. I'd be surprised.
Lots of interesting information. If people want to find, connect with Margaret and Meghla, you can join India Sourcing Group, and I think on the other slide there was a website, India Sourcing Network, indiasourcing.net, right?
Yeah,
indiasourcing.net. Everything about India. You can source products like this. And also, if you would like to get access to their India Sourcing Workshop for free, you just need to get Klikbox, which contains additional more than 20 deals from other speakers and experts from Klikbox Summit. So thank you very much, Margaret and Meghla, and good luck in your business.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisette.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And those who are still watching, please check this video playlist where we collected different videos related to Indian sourcing. So you'll find more videos with Meghla and a few other videos where we talk about this country and how to get products for your Amazon business. Bye-bye.